Hello and welcome to the Forecast ABC series. In this video, we will look at how you can create and scope a project, as well as how you can monitor and control the given project using the timeline. This video has two parts. In the former, you will discover the different project settings and a way to scope your project in terms of milestones and tasks. In the latter, you will find out how to get a visual representation of your scoping and timeline, and how to make most of the task dependencies. Throughout the demonstration, feel free to stop the video at any time to replicate what you see me doing on the screen. With this in mind, let us sign in to Forecast. To begin with, let us create a new project. To do so, go to your global Add button. Other than creating projects, this is your place for making tasks, adding clients, generating reports, and much more. If you need to, pause the video now to have a closer look at the different options the global Add button offers. Without further ado, let us create a new project, of which my theme will be a familiar scenario of organizing a grand party. So let me call the project name accordingly. Of course, I want to set the dates and set the project color. So far, so good. Now, notice that for the moment, I choose not to include a client, but this can be changed later on in the project settings. Then, see the More Setting option. Okay. First, I can add labels which will help me to control, categorize, organize the tasks, skills, and team members. Let me add a few. For example, design, research, and strategy. Be sure to check out the ABC video on the admin panel and my profile where I discuss the labels in more detail. Next, you have the option of duplicating a project, which in practice means that you can save time on creating similar projects by using templates. Since, in this case, my Celebration Day project is quite unlike my other projects, I will choose to begin from scratch. On the other hand, notice what happens if I do choose to duplicate an existing project. I have a choice of duplicating one of my existing projects, such as this one, and notice that I can duplicate a whole variety of different settings, which will save me time on the setup. Nevertheless, let me choose no for the purposes of this discussion. Next, you have Work with Sprints option. Sprints are of course especially valuable to those working in Agile. But bear in mind that if you do not decide to include the sprints now, you can add them later on through the project settings. Again, we will look at how to access project settings after a project has been created in part 2 of this video. Now you get to decide between task and project allocations. This is an important distinction as it will affect the display of the heat map in Schedule. In short, use the task allocation if you want to focus on specific tasks assigned to your team members. So, task allocation will serve you especially well if you are working in waterfall. Now, if you use task allocation, Forecast will automatically create an allocation bar for you. In practice, this is how an allocation bar would look. And again, it would be created automatically. And if you're working with a task allocation project, you will only be able to create tasks when you drag through your schedule on the given project. You won't be able to create allocations since the allocation bar is created for you already. In just a second, I'll demonstrate how this looks in practice. On the other hand, if you're working in Agile, consider project allocations. For example, say that you don't know your tasks in advance and that you only know that you want to book a team member for, let's say, 40 hours over the next week or so. Then, the project allocation option is for you. Crucially, when working with project allocation, you can add tasks to a project and assign your people to that project. However, the task bar associated with that project will not affect the allocation bar in any way when working with project allocations. That means that in practice you have to manage your allocations manually if you wish to see changes in the heat map. So, unlike the task allocation, when using project allocation, you can add allocations by dragging on the heat map to see the following screen. But this is what would happen if you were to drag across the heat map to allocate a team member, for example. To clarify, consider the work of my colleague Dave Davies. He's working on two projects. P10 here is a task allocation project, and P12 here is a project allocation type project. Now, as mentioned before, notice that I have allocation bar here, all right, and that I cannot create an allocation by dragging on through the screen. However, if I drag through on the task level, notice that I'll be able to create a task for Dave. Then, notice what happens if I drag across a given task in time. The allocation bar follows, affecting the heat map accordingly. And this is quite important. Then, contrast this situation with a project allocation type project, on which if I was to drag through the screen, I can create an allocation. And this is the familiar window that we have just seen. But, of course, I can also drag on the task level to create a new task. And, importantly, notice that if I was to drag a task on a project allocation type project, like so, the allocation bar remains unchanged. Importantly, bear in mind that you can always change the project type later on through the given project settings, as which we will look into in the second part of this video. Now, consider the three different budget types. Do not worry if this looks a little overwhelming. The basic distinctions are simple. A fixed price project is a project that you bill at a set price no matter how long it takes to complete. A time and material project, on the other hand, chosen here, is an agreement where you bill by the hour at a specific hourly rate. In other words, you invoice the work done only. And finally, you might also want to have a project that is not invoiced. When choosing the non-billable budget type, you will be able to see your internal cost and the hours spent on each task only. You can always refresh your memory by hovering over the I icon, that is to say the information icon, where you see the description of the different budget types. Finally, you get to choose a specific rate card. For the moment, I will choose not to have a specific rate card attached to this project, but this can be changed later on through the project settings. To learn how to create a set of rate cards, in order to select it in the Create New Project window, be sure to check out the ABC video on the admin panel, where you create your rate cards. Basic settings in place, let us click on Save and Continue. Then we will get to assign people to our new project. Importantly, notice that I have the option of choosing between teams and individuals. So let me add a few of my team members to my project. Now we are ready to start scoping out our project. The purpose of scoping is essentially to divide your project into digestible chunks and to help you plan an effective project. Each milestone, i.e. phase of your project, will be populated with tasks which you create. And once this is completed, the scoping page will serve as your statement of work. I will begin the process for you so that you get an idea of how this would look in practice, and then I will demonstrate a ready scope project. So, to start, simply hit the New Milestone button. Arguably, my first phase of my project will be about my venue, so let me call it accordingly. Then, I need to set the days, which will be important because it will help the schedule to reflect faithfully my project. So let me go and choose the 3rd to the 5th, for example. Then I want to create tasks that will populate my milestone. So simply go to New Task and let us call this one Research the Venue. Next and importantly, I want to set up a role, which in this case will be the strategist, for example. This is important because the roles in forecast are connected to the billing rates you set. So each role is connected with a given rate card, which will allow you to bill your client. This is why you can only add only one role per task. To learn more about adding roles and setting different rate cards, again, be sure to check out the admin panel video. Then, of course, I want to assign people to my tasks. And let me choose John Jones. Notice that it is easy to choose the appropriate person because I can see their project roles displayed. In part 2 of this video, we'll have a look at the settings where you can look at your team and make sure that their project role corresponds with their role. Next, set the status of the task. I will choose to keep it as to do. Note that the status of the task corresponds to the different columns in your project workflow. To learn more about the project workflow and how you can create columns with different statuses, check out the ABC video on the workflow. Finally, let us set our low and high estimates. For example, to 3 and 5. Importantly, you can also choose to stick with a given value, say for example 3 hours, if you know exactly how long this task will take. If you do not, set up a range, just like I did, to help you plan in the long run and learn through, for example, reports, which we discuss in another edition of ABC videos. Moving on, my next phase, i.e. milestone, will be about, for example, the music and the pictures at my party. So again, new milestone, and then set the date accordingly. That is to say, to start where the initial one ended, and then create a task to populate it. Here, notice that I can duplicate a given task to help me save time on some manual work. I can simply drag the copy of the task and change it accordingly. Excellent. And now my changes are reflected. Now have a look at how the project will appear when I have finished my scoping. So this is my ready-made project. As you can see, I have a set of different milestones with tasks within each, with the dates, roles, assignees, status, and low and high estimates filled in. Now, notice that I can easily navigate through the milestones using the select bar in the upper left corner. So I have 3 options: all milestones, down milestones, and active. For example, let me see just the down milestones. As you can see, the number has significantly decreased. And it applies to active milestones as well. Then, and very importantly, there is the eye icon, which will help you to narrow or expand your view. For example, let me see the remaining hours on my project. As you can see, I am now able to see the remaining hours. But there is far more that I can enable. If you need to, pause the video now to examine the different options in more detail. Next, you have the option of exporting your scoping page, which will in practice work as your statement of work into a CSV file. Then, to help you deal with manual work, be sure to check out the bulk editing options. So simply click on select and then click on a number of different tasks, and notice that I now have several options to modify a set group of tasks. For example, I can choose to update the dates or labels, or I can move them to a sprint or another milestone. Again, if you need to, stop the video now to see and think which of those bulk editing options will serve you the most. Then, use the filtering options to narrow down your view. Importantly, you can use more than one filter at a time. Let me first filter by a team member and then by the status. So, for example, let me filter by team member of, for example, Bernard, and then let me filter by the status of, for example, in progress. You can, of course, clear your filters at any time to return to our initial view. Then there is the option of collapse, which will help me to see in a snapshot all of my milestones. Notice the different shades of color here, indicating progress. Finally, and importantly, you have two options. You can group by a person to see the breakdown within the given milestone. And you can also show empty persons. This closes the part 1 of this video. I hope to see you in the second part. Thank you very much for your attention.